When looking back at standout RPG titles over the years, I personally recall games such as Fallout New Vegas, Baldur's Gate, Mass Effect, and Knights of the Old Republic. No, Chad, not you. Even PC adventure games such as Discworld Missing Presumed. Oh my god, I'm old! One title that I frequently see on top of RPG lists, as well as suggested in the comments, is the blood-sucking 2004 PC exclusive Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Having seen its name so much but never checked the game out myself, today we rectify that and find out just what this game offered its players to lead it to being heralded as one of the greatest examples of the RPG genre, even to this day. And without saying too much, this one is a hell of a ride. My name's Mitch Mannix, and this is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, role-playing royalty. If at any point you feel like I've deserved it, please drop the video a like, and consider subscribing to the channel for a whole host of RPG greatness. You won't believe how much that helps out small YouTubers like me. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, developed by Troika Games, is set in a world created by White Wolves Publishing and their associated tabletop games of the same name. An adventure of a fledgling vampire's journey through the early 21st century's Los Angeles, exploring the secret world of its vampire society. Booting up the game for the first time, I have to admit I was skeptical about the high praise the game still to this day receives, but little did I know just how gripping and hilarious this experience was about to be.
Oh my gosh!
God damn it every time!
About you when you didn't show.
When jumping into the game, we're asked to pick from a set of historical traits from our life as humans, which is the first exposure to just how 2000s-esque and hilariously written this game is. Physical traits such as ex-SWAT, with a bonus to firearms, are paired with Peeping Tom, which reads, "It's not your fault you were born lacking in the appearance department. Since nobody likes you, your unfulfilled and repressed sexual desires have turned you into quite the little pervert." And the brilliantly passive-aggressive video game publisher option, totally not a cheeky swipe at the Bloodlines publisher Activision. Continuing, we are introduced to the attributes screen, which details the character progression framework, with combat options for melee, firearms, and vampire abilities, as well as social attributes allowing for seduction, intimidation, or manipulation. The story begins with a cutscene depicting our transformation into the kindred vampire after a saucy encounter, waking to find our sire, as the game terms those that turn others, waiting patiently for us to wake anew. Not before rudely being interrupted by the most aggressive Jehovah's Witness I've ever seen. It is revealed that the long gangly arm of vampire law forbids unauthorized turning of humans to vampires, and the punishment of death is carried out with our lady friend, while we're introduced to a few of the main characters of Bloodline's story. It goes without saying that off the bat, as well as now looking back over the whole game, that Bloodline's voice acting performances are top of the line throughout its runtime, visiting a whole host of interesting and compelling characters. Smiling Jack here, voiced by John DiMaggio, talks us through the basic mechanics of the game, including stealth, combat, as well as how to feed on the blood of unsuspecting members of the public to fuel our vampiric powers. I'm sorry, what? Stalking NPCs into dark alleyways and taking advantage of gullible characters works well for enhancing the feeling of being a sneaky, bloodthirsty danger lurking in the city's underbelly. Following on from the tutorial, we're unleashed upon the game's first region, Santa Monica. Following both the story beats of the main storyline, entwined in conflicts and politics of vampire society, as well as some really well done and interesting side quests. In one quest, we are tasked with recovering some explosives from a local gang of drug peddlers. Both the NPC interactions as well as the choices for dialogue options showcase both the brilliant writing as well as a reminder back to an era where developers were not so pressured to avoid controversial or edgy subject matter.
Explosives. Fun stuff. You can get yourself a lot of attention that way. I may have something. Why would you need to get your hands on some fireworks?
During a side quest investigating a local series of killings, we finally track down the perpetrator, only to have him try and take us out while wielding the arm of one of his victims as a weapon. Progressing through the early hours, it's hard not to get drawn in by the over-the-top characters and story, as well as the game's ability to constantly provide something new in its missions, smashing up an art gallery for a Harley Quinn-esque vampire seductress, tracking down an heirloom from a haunted mansion with great horror moments and set pieces, questing interlacing with the main plotline, such as giving a dying woman life with my epic vampire blood, saving her.
Yes.
Bloodlines bleeds charm in its world, and I found myself picking up all the busy work I could just to find out what kind of zany and interesting people the game would lead me to. which includes my personal favourite, the attendant at the blood bank. When it comes to setting the mood with the game's music, Rick Schaefer delivers a soundtrack that both pumps up the pace with tracks that with their early 2000 stylings take me back to artists such as the Crystal Method and Chemical Brothers, but also hitting some more somber and thought-provoking tones, which I'll admit, sometimes led me to staying present in an area just to listen to them in full. The soundtrack, like so many things in Bloodlines, gives the game so much identity, and I imagine upon hearing it some years from now, I'll be immediately taken back to fond memories of my time spent with this title. The game also has a number of licensed tracks, so for the remainder of the video I will be forced to swap these out, but can confirm that they also do add to the overall feeling of the game, as well as serving as a great blast from the past. The NPCs in the game also seemingly very much agree, as in various locations they can be found boogieing down to some 2004 classics. There's something about dancing with a cold dead stare that's truly disturbing. The combat in the game centers around first and third person action, with a number of melee and ranged weapons to choose from. The combat itself, especially the melee combat, is a little rough around the edges, from enemies blasting you in the head from being face down in the dirt, to bodies flying wildly all over the place during encounters. I wouldn't say that the combat is Bloodlines' best asset. It does add enjoyment in the RPG, being able to spec into a specific type, as well as further augment and upgrade the vampire abilities, which include combat skills to heal or debuff enemies, all the way up to brutal blood magic, shapeshifting, and summoning spectral companions, or more scalable abilities like temporary invisibility. Progression is tied to the allocation of experience points into combat abilities, as well as utility skills such as lockpicking and computer hacking. Later in the game I did find that some boss encounters in particular were far more of a challenge without certain skills leveled, or dependent on skills in guns as opposed to melee combat. Something that's not unheard of in slightly older RPGs, but overall the balance was fair to allow the player to truly pick their mode of destruction. The world and its landscape does well for the time, with various city hubs as well as some great looking internal environments. Blood-soaked grand looking estates to dank underground lairs, the environments sell the game's settings brilliantly. There's even a cursed as fuck sewer level that sucks, just to add to that 90s and early 2000s nostalgia. A lot of attention has clearly gone into the environmental design of the game, both to add to the creepy theme.
Ugh, what kind of Picasso fucking nightmare fuel is that? Jesus Christ. Look at that face.
As well as now and again dropping in a bit of humour. Overlooking the shortcomings of the time, the game does have some jank to it. Small things such as the world's most indecisive poker player, the game's troubles handling swishy coats, or the invasion of the killer boxes. Nothing game-breaking in my playthrough at least, although I did get stuck in the door to the pawn shop, but I suspect that's just some rubbish ploy to get me to buy more of the owner's nonsense. One or two more things did crop up, but honestly, just added to the spooky atmosphere, or injected some more humour.
Enough with your obsession with watches, woman.
Gear and items can be purchased from a number of vendors across the city, with collectibles as well as quest completion rewards providing funds. But aside from blood bags peddled by my favourite slice of insanity here, most of the weapons and ammo I needed were simply pillaged from my defeated foes. When it comes to the horror department, Bloodlines, even for a 2004 standard, doesn't exactly install dread and fear into the hearts of the audience, but opts for a more gory and campy style with its imagining of the vampire culture, and I for one feel that the game is far better for it.
Those of you sitting in the first few rows will get wet.
Don't get me wrong, there are some really well done moments that reach to strike a chord, chilling the player, especially in its haunted mansion section. And Rick Schaefer's soundtrack is masterfully crafted at painting a menacing and deeply foreboding atmosphere. But as far as genuine fear goes, the only time I felt it was a legit jumping out of my seat jump scare while being busted by a cop wandering around where I shouldn't have been.
Jesus Christ, that scared the shit out of me.
With not too many moments really emoting any genuine fear. Cold dead stare that's truly disturbing. I stand corrected. When looking at why this title has not only garnered such a cult following, but is highly regarded as a standout RPG experience, for me it boils down to Bloodlines knowing exactly what it wants to be. A twisted and gripping tale of a fledgling vampire with obscene amounts of character and charm dripping from each moment. A dialed-in story to follow, with some amazingly well-written encounters, performed to perfection, accompanied by a stellar soundtrack. Even though the combat in the game for the most part is quite clunky, and the latter part of the game does slow down somewhat, Bloodlines hits core RPG elements so hard that it goes a long way to gloss over its shortcomings. I can't stress how enjoyable it was while questing through the game just to see who I would encounter next, leading to yet another brilliantly witty encounter with many laughs whether intended or not.
Don't have it, do you? I didn't doubt you'd find this.
The more I searched around its world, the more I would uncover, hacking into the staff computer of the building where I lived to find out that the security guard was spying on and writing notes on my fellow inhabitants, between missions sneaking into an abandoned hospital just to be greeted by a hysterical filmmaker fleeing from yet another disturbing creature of the night.
It's coming for me!
A creature that actually ends up being a source of various side quests. Bloodlines' world is dense with fun and interesting subtle jokes and additional content that only serve to enhance the already powerful sense of care and attention taken when developing the game. The optional choices the player will make not only play a part in the ending that they will receive, but also are in play through most of the questing content, from using your intimidation and seduction skills to unlock varied and sometimes hilarious additional dialogue options as well as alternative results, to optionally choosing to abduct a vulnerable human by getting them hooked on your power-granting vampire blood and unleashing them to do your bidding. These elements are not unique even for the time, but are executed fantastically throughout, leading to huge amounts of replayability, as well as making a playthrough feel expansive, establishing your identity as a newly turned lurker in the darkness. The reason why I believe this game still to this day is regarded with such a high praise is that it distills down the key factors that make RPGs so enjoyable. Amazingly well-designed characters, a gripping and maintained focus on its subject matter, as well as an unforgettable sense of humour. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines made me feel fully engrossed in its world, taking time just to take it all in, as well as being keen to explore or just to see what I would encounter next, to me, is not only the backbone of a successful role-playing experience, but also sadly, an ever-increasing short supply in more recent years. My first couple of hours with the game, I was honestly unsure about its reputation and thought it may be more down to nostalgia. As for when my mind changed, well, I can't really put my finger on a specific moment, as I was far too drawn in to even fully realise. And as far as I'm concerned, to me, that says it all. As with my look into Kingdom Come Deliverance, if you're a fan of games that put the role-playing into RPGs, then Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, I can say, sits deservedly as one of the titles that is a showcase of masterful execution of the genre. So that was my look into Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Truly recommended for those looking for a really genuine, authentic RPG adventure. There's even a community patch that's been released that has ongoing updates that, along with ironing out some of the technical issues, adding some cool content, it also adds for compatibility with more modern hardware. Thank you so much for watching. Please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.